Lionel, is that you?
There, I think I got it.
Bruce?
Lionel?
Bruce?
Is that you? Lionel, is that you?
Yeah, the lights are out.
Nobody's home.
That's the night that the lights went out in Georgia. And
Great tune.
It is. What's her name? She was on the Carol Burnett show. Oh, don't tell me.
Vicki Lawrence?
Vicki Lawrence. That's the night that the lights went out in Georgia.
Reba McEntire covered it as well.
She did. Reba McEntire did cover it, I think, several years later. But Vicki Lawrence was a true one-hit wonder. That song was huge, and she really had no singing career whatsoever before or after.
No.
That's what happens when you shoot an innocent man.
Yes, right.
Okay. That's why I'm not a singer, because I obviously can't.
Right.
Or have no desire to learn.
Okay.
So tonight, is this the first podcast since the last podcast?
Indeed it is.
Hot
diggity. I came prepared this time and studied for this question.
Ah, good. You did your notes already.
I did my notes already. I did my note already.
All right. Yeah, your note. And so that voice you hear is none other than Bruce, the moderately agitated male boy in a moderately agitated state. And we also have with us is somebody you've come to know and love is George Taylor, the boy wonder.
Yes.
Well, good day.
Good day, eh?
Good day, eh?
Good day, eh?
How are you now?
Are you staying safe?
Doing my best.
Although
you were talking about states, and that brought to my mind Joe Walsh with that song "State of Confusion," right?
Joe Walsh. I really can't. I'm going to be completely
honest. In a state of confusion. I'm going to effort that. I think Joe Walsh.
Yeah, effort that, would you?
I believe you're right.
Effort that, will you? Okay. Tonight, you guys I'm going to tell you guys a little story. The guy we're going to interview tonight is, he's one of those kind of annoying guys.
Oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
So his name is David Lehlbach, and he is the president of Tangent Scale Models, which is one of the premier model freight car manufacturers in the hobby today. It wasn't that long ago at Springfield, earlier this year, that they unveiled a beautiful caboose model, too, that was very, very neat. And they are just a premier freight car manufacturer. But David is one of these like super organized guys. He's a doer. He's a get things done kind of guy. So every time I would interview him at either like the Springfield train show or the NMRA train show or something, I'd say, "Hey, let's do an interview." And he'd go, yeah, that'd be great. And then I'd send him a message, and then and Dave was always trying to pin me down. And even this time he was like, "Well, maybe we should do it." And I said, "Let's do an interview." He says, "Well, maybe we should do it closer to the national train show dates." And I'm like, no, just show up. Just come into the studio and start talking. That's all you got to do. And then we'll handle it from there. I said, we will even release this podcast on the exact date that you prefer. So finally,
we have the technology.
We have the technology. So finally, he relented, and he has come. He's traveled to Busted Knuckle.
There you go.
To join us. Now, there's also rumors that Ron Marsh from Ron's Trains and Things will join us, too. But
is he going to tell us what the things are?
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to tell us what the things are.
We're going to have to keep badgering him until he tells us what they are.
Yeah, and we'll keep badgering him. And the only reason I'm warning you ahead of time is because he's probably going to try to score a free N-scale freight car to review or something.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Oh, there's an ulterior motive here.
Yeah.
And it was Joe Walsh's Life of Illusion. But there is wall of confusion in the lyrics. So.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right. So, Bruce, can you go down to the green room and bring Mr. Lehlbach? I guess it should be the boy wonder that goes, really.
Yeah, it's that boy wonder. He's the newest guy here. He's the low man on the totem pole.
Yeah, he's the low man on the pole.
I'll go. I'll go willingly.
He might be even short enough to miss his head.
Yeah. Don't bang.
Watch that pipe.
Yeah, what was it? Don't bang your noodle on the something.
Don't ding your dome.
Yeah, don't ding your dome.
All right. I'll be right back. Hey, David, come on over to the studio.
Hello. Is this the right spot?
Yeah. You barely even got in the door and he's talking already. I got a feeling this is going to be really bad.
Well, he was yelling at me down the hallway.
I was singing Funk 49 since we're on a
There
Joe
you go.
Walsh thing.
Funk 49.
Yep.
Yeah, got to know your Joe Walsh, Lionel.
Yeah. Could you hear us in the green room talking?
And there was also Funks 47 and 48.
All right.
Were you?
That's something I don't know.
Were you? We're gonna have to be careful because he's using some sort of voice activated mic, and if we talk over top of him, we won't be able to hear all of his nuggets of wisdom about the model railroading industry. So we all need to be aware of that. So, anyways, David, so you could hear us in the green room?
Yeah, there's a speaker in there. I'm not sure if you know that. You're usually on the air, so I don't think you know it. But there's a speaker that plays the audio for you.
Oh, so
that's what that is.
Yeah. So you heard everything Bruce said about you being annoying?
Yeah. Yep, I sure did. Yeah.
I'll have to talk to maintenance about that. We can't have that.
Yeah, Bruce, that was really inappropriate.
I apologize. I'm sorry. But it's good to know that it's there now, so we're going to have to find the wire and cut it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, David. So is that true? Are you one of the premier freight car manufacturers in the model railroading hobby industry?
Wow, that's a nice loaded question to start off with. Thanks.
Yeah, I know. That's the way it works here. We'll get into the easier. We'll get into the softball stuff later on.
Yeah, I'd like to think that's kind of where Tangent is. That was our goal from the beginning. When I set up this company, that was my goal to produce the best freight car models that could be made. I felt that freight cars were ignored by a lot of the major manufacturers, especially being done at a high level, and that was my going in proposition, we shall say.
Okay, so how long ago did you start this company?
The company kind of had its roots in the mid 2000s or so. I had to create a fictional company as part of my my graduate degree experience, and I created a fictional model train company that became Tangent. And that's kind of one of the root stories for it. The other root story is I'd been helping out a few of the other model train brands, Lifelike, Proto 2000, back in the 90s on a couple of their projects, including some of their freight car projects and the Jeep 30 and the Jeep 9s, especially the Phase 2 ones. And I also helped out Athearn with a few projects, and I helped out a guy named Chris Clune who did a lot of tooling for several brands with some of his research and that kind of thing, and worked with Chris to set up a new company. We were going to do that together. Long story short, that didn't quite happen the way that both of us had intended, and we went our separate ways. He ended up starting a company called Exact Rail about a year and a half after Tangent was launched and rolling. So Tangent was formed in 2007. Formally, we launched at the Detroit National Train Show.
So how did you get involved with all these people that you were helping out with tooling and everything else you were doing? Like, how did you how did you know all these people?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I met them.
All right, hang on. If he's obviously never listened to the podcast, Bruce.
Yeah, it's a good thing we don't score this part.
Yeah, exactly. Are you concerned that some of the questions wouldn't be great?
Say that again. I'm sorry, you got me laughing now.
Well, you said it was a great question, and I'm thinking maybe you thought some of the questions wouldn't be great.
Wow, this is gonna be a rough crowd. I think I need a beer or something.
Oh yeah. We highly
recommend alcohol.
Yes, we highly recommend that you do these interviews in a severely inebriated state. It's much better for you.
The more sedated you are, the better.
Yeah.
Right.
Would you like the tinfoil helmet? Do you think that would help you?
Nah, I'm not that kind of guy.
All right. Okay. Okay. So how did you know all these people?
Yeah, well, I mean, the real quick answer is I knew people through friends of friends for the most part. I got to know some of the guys at Lifelike Proto 2000 in the 90s, just volunteering to help them with freight car stuff. They'd started out with some steam era cars, as you may remember if you're interested in that kind of history. And I was, really promoting a certain covered hopper that they should do. And they ended up wanting to do that one, and I helped them out doing a lot of the research and that kind of thing. So that's how I met the guys at Lifelike, and the guys at Athearn. I think I can't remember exactly it was mostly through some mutual friends, shall we say. So some other friends that were helping them with projects, and I got involved on a few here and there. So
okay, it's important to keep in mind you're free to leave at any time, but the questions just get harder and harder. So lots of people would say to Proto 2000 or Athearn and say, "Hey, I want to help you with freight cars." So there has to be somehow you knew these guys, some sort of a connection, because lots of people want to help, but to have the ability that they respected, that they wanted you to help them. There must have been some sort of a connection. You guys were all in a club, or you guys knew each other through, illegal gambling or something.
Yeah, I'd like to say no. I mean, there's really no other way other than the telephone. It was all cold calling on my part. It might have helped that, I worked in telesales in the mid '90s when all this kind of started, and I was really good at picking up the phone and, chatting it up with people. But yeah, no, and I don't want to overinflate what I did, because I think it's, when you're on the manufacturer side of the desk, there's a significant amount of work. And, when you're on the outside, you help with photos and knowledge and that kind of thing. But translating that into product is another whole very complex set of processes.
Okay, so that's a really interesting to know then, because basically I actually in late May and early June I released a bunch of interviews I did at Rapido Trains with Jason Tron and 3 or 4 of the guys that worked there. And Jason's always been very kind to me, but I was even more of an eye-opener just how much is involved in producing either a locomotive or a freight car to the kind of detail that your company does. So, okay, so you just wanted to get involved, so you started contacting people and said, "Hey, how about this or how about that," kind of thing?
Yeah, pretty much. And it was a specific project by project basis at all those companies. I wasn't, it wasn't a lot of general stuff. Again, I don't want to overinflate this too much.
No. Well, you're not overinflating it, but it's interesting to know that, people are interested to know the history of tangent scale models, because you're an interesting guy, and people are interested in a company that's as good as yours, or I don't know what's the word, that produces such a high-end product. People are interested to know how you got there. So what did you say it was part of your graduate or your university work, your graduate work? You made you created a model railroad manufacturing company, kind of like the FedEx guy did. Isn't that how FedEx started? The guy did a university thesis or something like that, and for his university, and that's from there FedEx was created, I believe, something like that.
I think, yeah, something like that. I have to effort the details, but yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool that you what year would that have been?
That was in 2006 or so.
So is that when you graduated school, university?
This was graduate studies. I graduated from college in the 90s. I'm a bit older than that, so
okay.
This was graduate studies.
All right, so through the 90s when you were graduating college and that, you got involved with these people trying to help because you were excited, helping them with slides and suggestions and blah, blah, blah. And then along the way, so let's go back now. Oh, by the way, cue the music. It's none other. Ron Marsh has walked into the studio. It's just done a walk-on very similar to the way Bob Hope used to have done. Ron, it's great to see you.
Thank you. It's great to see you. Appreciate the opportunity to. Glad you left the key under the doormat outside of the studio so I could get in.
Were you in the studio next door taping one of those great Ron's Trains and Things videos?
Yeah, exactly. Shooting ads for Model Railroad Academy.
Oh, were you really?
No.
So you're here with David Lehlbach is here. Of course, you recognize Bruce, the moderately agitated mail boy, and George Saylor, the boy wonder. But we're interviewing David Lehlbach of Tangent Scale Models, and I've been grilling him on how he got started. And I also I already warned him that you'd be trying to suck up to him so you can get a free freight car to review on your. So
I wouldn't ask and I wouldn't refuse. Okay.
So he's
We might
already
be able to arrange that.
Oh, see, look at that. I already laid the groundwork for you. Oh my God. I'm practically producing most of your videos at this point.
Well, I need a producer. I was on the market, so I'll definitely keep your resume near the top of the stack.
Look no further.
Yeah, look no further. Okay, so all right, David, have you been a lifelong model railroader?
Oh yeah, going way back. I had wooden trains that were made from a company in Skinny Atlas, New York, growing up. And those wood trains were kind of like Brios. I think before even Brio, or maybe they were made as clones of Brio, but they were the literally the same scale as Brio. And I had all the tracks all over the place in my room and down the hallway and all that growing up. And then my dad had an HO layout that I absolutely destroyed about 5 or 6 years old. And I think it was for Christmas on my sixth Christmas or fifth Christmas, one of those two. I got my first Lionel train set from my grandparents in Cortland, New York. And that started it.
So are you from upstate New York?
I grew up in New Jersey. I was actually born in New Jersey, just outside of New York City. But my parents grew up in upstate New York in Cortland.
Oh, yep. Okay. I know Cortland. I've stayed at the Hampton Inn in Cortland. And where'd you get your where was that first train from?
A company that was Skinny Atlas, which is near the Finger Lake, one of the Finger Lakes up there.
Yeah. Do you know a guy named Dave Abeles?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Dave Abeles lives in one town over from where I grew up, actually.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm.
And all his family, his mother's family, was all from the Skinny Atlas area. So I was wondering if maybe you guys maybe knew each other or something.
We do know each other only through internet kind of media and some mutual friends.
Right.
But we've never actually met. I have an invitation to get to his place, and quite honestly, I drove right by the town that he lives in several times, going to and from Springfield this year. And I bought speakers for my stereo behind me from a store not 10 miles from his house in Somerville, New Jersey. But I have not been to his house yet, so I owe him a visit.
All right. Do you know what's wrong with Dave? There's something wrong. There's something wrong with him. I mean, he's not hooked up right. I've never seen a guy with so much energy.
I thought you were talking about Dave Abeles, not me.
I am talking about Dave Abeles. Do you know what's wrong with Dave? All right, see, you guys have the same.
That's not fair. The guy's not here. You can't make fun of him.
Oh, I'm not making fun of him. I'm asking a serious question.
Again, he's apparently never listened to the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so. All right, so you've been involved in trains your whole life, and then as you went through, you got into your teens. Did you stay with it, or did you do the same as everybody else, girls and cars for a while, or what happened?
Yeah, there were definitely girls and cars phase, but I've always been into railroad stuff, both real and model, and I went to college in the Midwest because I wanted to be near Chicago, where all the railroads were. So. Yeah, I think I've always been kind of into it. I haven't really dropped it very much.
Turn your camera off there. It'll help your internet connection. And plus, we don't really want to look at each other. Ron, don't turn your camera on, whatever you do.
Thanks.
Okay, so all right. So as you got to the end of your teens, did you start to get into it? You went to school in the Midwest. Where'd you go to school?
I went to college in Beloit College, which just so happens to be in Beloit, Wisconsin, which is where Fairbanks Morse was located. Minor coincidence.
Yeah, minor. You are one of these. You just love the whole model railroading and trains thing, don't you?
Well, if you're going to do something, you don't do it half-assed, right? You got to do it right.
Exactly. The thing of it is, David, you are like a man of mystery. I see you at the train shows, the big train shows, and people are just like oogling and googling over your booth because they love tangent scale models. So by the time we're done here, people are going to be like, "Oh my God, this guy's so cool! I'm going to even buy even more models from him." So you're like the model railroading man of mystery to me, anyways.
During the formative model railroading years, is there any particular friends or anything you hung around with that had the same interests, or you're kind of on your own?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bruce. I grew up right by Northlands, which is a model train exhibit in Flemington, New Jersey. It was in Three Bridges. Actually, it's in Three Bridges, New Jersey, right near Flemington. And that layout is where I was a club member, and I grew up. And it was an amazing layout because it was located in this guy's basement. And then he had a ranch house, and he had a normal, kind of ranch basement, 50 feet by, 25 or so. And then he added on an additional basement to his house. So it was effectively just another basement connecting to the back of the ranch house with nothing on top of it. I kid you not, nothing on top of it, no house. And then he added on another basement on top of, or next to that one. And then he added on a fourth and then a fifth. So he added on 4 additional underground basements to his ranch house. And it was, he had this house in basically a big cornfield, and he had lots of acreage. And he had a train club, and he was, really a neat guy. Really into model trains was his vice. He really just loved the creative aspect of model trains and loved these big scenes. Anyway, he ended up closing the layout in his house and opened up a big commercial layout place called Northlands in Three Bridges, New Jersey, which still exists today. It's on Route 202. And that's where my formative years here were. That's where I hung out. There's also a hobby shop in Flemington, New Jersey, where I hung out and bought Bev Bell models and got my formative HO years in there after my short line L phase.
Short line L phase.
Wow.
Yeah, it was not a long line L phase. Sorry.
Man, can anybody hear echo now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
What is that all of a sudden? That's weird. That's weird. That's weird, wild stuff. That's what Bob Hope used to say. Ron, this show has turned into be all about Ron Marsh and Ron Strange and things.
Because I'm Bob Hope now.
Yeah. That's the analogy.
Well,
on the road to Morocco.
No, you just walked. you just walked into the studio halfway through the show, just like Bob used to do on the Johnny Carson show.
Exactly.
And they'd start playing the music and the whole bit. Okay, so this is cool about the North End. See, there you go, David. Look at that already. How interesting is that? Because not everybody, that's not true. I know of Northlands. So this guy kept building basements under the property to make this. Like, how big of an addition would a basement be under this thing?
The basements were generally significantly larger than your average ranch house basement. They were somewhere on the order of 120 feet, maybe by 50 would be a guess. I really don't remember the exact.
Yeah.
But they were monstrous, and the layout that he built was featured, in many different newspaper articles and press things at the time. It was even on Reading Rainbow when I was a kid. It was on that PBS show Reading Rainbow, and I was on it with LeVar Burton, the host, and it was kind of, all these experiences I had as a kid. It was kind of neat, growing up near New York, and lots of train stuff and lots of, passenger trains, freight trains, just on the local railroads, and then lots of model train stuff around because there's quite a few legendary clubs in New Jersey and hobby shops, and it's just a great spot.
So we're something's happening when I talk now. All right, we'll try it. So we're 24 minutes in. And so far, we've discovered that you were a part of the Northlands in its early days. You were on Reading Rainbow with LeVar Burton. I knew this. I knew it. I can always tell these guys that are tough to get the information out. There's like tons and tons of information in there. You were with how many times Reading Rainbow came once to this layout or what?
Yeah, Reading Rainbow came once to do a feature. They had kind of if I remember right, and I don't remember the episode, but I bet you could Google it. There was like an imaginary story time thing where he goes back in time, and there was something about riding a train, and the model trains were a big part of that, and they would have pictures of him standing inside of this layout with model trains running around him in various angles. And that's what this layout was famous for. Northlands and still is kind of famous for these really huge, 20 to 30 foot scenes where there's just, all this incredible rock work and that kind of thing. Not a prototype modelers thing, but it's like Malcolm Furlow, but much more dramatic, shall we say.
Yeah, whatever happened to Malcolm Furlow? There's a guy. There's a guy we'd like to track down. Reading
Basically
Rain.
rode off into the desert.
Yeah. So I vaguely remember that. I vaguely remember that LeVar Burton thing with him standing amongst the model railroad and all that stuff. That's fascinating. And well, we'd love to spend more time. I know you'd like to spend another hour on Northlands, but we can't. We have too much to cover. So okay. So how old? This is like what? Do you mind if I ask how old of a man you are?
I am 47.
Okay, so this was back in the 80s then.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And okay, so during the 80s, you got involved with these guys and then out of school. So what is that noise, boy? Anybody figure that out? Anybody?
No, it sounds like somebody's getting feedback somewhere.
We'll keep trying. Do you have a headset of any kind there, David?
I unfortunately do not.
Do you have earbuds?
I can do that if you give me a couple minutes. Yes.
All right, we can give you a couple minutes.
All right, give me a second.
All right, we'll do that.
You're going to leave this in the podcast, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing plays better than some dead air. That's
Oh, no, that's why we have elevator music.
Exactly.
What's new at? Hey, we might keep this in. What's new at Ron's train? Hey, have you determined whether or not you're ever going to tell us what the things are or what?
Oh, I keep telling people what the things are, but it changes every week.
Things is a variable, something like a constant in engineering equations.
Exactly. That's Ron's trains and whatever I decide my other hobby is that particular week.
I think that feedback might be coming from Ron.
I'm wearing my headset.
I just don't know.
Neither do I.
I was hearing it too, but
Yeah, but hey, turn your camera back on for a minute, Ron.
okay. I'm in a different location.
Yeah, I say you got stuff hanging on the wall back there.
Check this out.
Yeah.
I'd like to claim that, but I can't.
Oh, where are you?
You got it at the garage sale?
I sat in a lawn chair inside of a deer blind and watched my son when he was 12 years old take that deer.
Nice.
Yeah. And I've told him from that day till this, you're ruined for life. You'll be trying to match that for the rest of your life.
That's a nice looking name. And is that what turkey feather fan behind it?
Yeah, on turkey. He got that turkey and that deer and a 39.5-inch northern all in the same year when he was 12 years old.
Holy cow.
And he's never beat any one of them.
Wow.
12 was a big year for Nate.
That's impressive.
So are you in your house, Ron?
Yeah, I'm in my son's room. Everybody, my wife and younger son took over the basement. It's the season finale of Survivor, which just give me a rock to beat my head against, as far as I'm concerned. But
yeah, there you go.
So they kind of took over the basement.
I have to go on record as having never seen a single episode of Survivor in all the number of years it's been on the TV.
Well, you're missing the season finale.
Well, actually, I'm not.
Yeah.
Are you ready to go, David?
I am. My wife is a nurse practitioner, and she took her headset to work, so I don't have one. But what I'm going to do is I'll mute every time you talk, so I'll just trigger the mute button. I don't think it's me, but I can do it.
All right, Ron, you mute. Let me see if it's you. Maybe it is. All right, Ron, you stay muted for a minute or forever. Okay, so where were we? We were at the stage where we have identified that you were at Northlands in the 80s, and they had an actual club there, eh?
Yeah, they did. They had a club of modelers, all HO scale guys, and various prototypes. A lot of steam back in that time. This was the 80s, basically, and there was a lot of, what I remember is a lot of Rivarossi steam engines. So, yep.
Wow. And did you have any kind of a layout after school, where did you settle after school?
I used to go to the hobby shop a lot of days of the week, and my mom would pick me up because she had to run errands or whatever in town. So when I was in high school, almost every day I would go to the hobby shop and see what was new, and then she'd pick me up. But yeah, I had a layout growing up to answer that question. Several of them, actually. It was mostly just a very, several 4x8 sheets of plywood that were arranged in different places in the basement, and there were a bunch of like bascule bridges connecting them. It was a Lionel layout, and then I kind of pulled all those tables together and made a large HO scale loop where I could run, a 50 car train or whatever. So double track loop kind of thing.
Wow. And so, but after like university, where did you settle?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I know the questions are all over the place, and that's interesting too. So I was just meaning, like, after university, like, where did you finally? Do you mind if I ask you what you went to university or college for? What was your major?
Sure. Yeah. My major was in history, which is kind of funny because I think Jason Schron at Rapido was going to be an art history major, if I remember right. So yeah, I was going to be a history major and a music major. I actually have a double major, Bachelor of Arts in both of those from Beloit College in Beloit, Wisconsin. And then I got a master's degree in the 2000s as well, a dreaded MBA.
Ah, the dreaded MBA. I graduated high school in grade 12, so I'm pretty proud of that.
That's excellent.
Yeah, I got a pretty good score. I got a pretty good mark in grade 11 geography. So
no one's ever actually seen the diploma, though.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so is that that schooling, was that to be like a history professor in university or something, or?
At that time, I wasn't at all sure what I wanted to do, but I only had a plan to try and work for the railroad industry, and I had a stack of rejection letters that's probably about a half an inch tall, and I still have it, and it's from every Class 1 and Amtrak, and I think I even have one from VIA, and I really want to work in the rail industry, and they basically told me go get an MBA, so I eventually did, but I ended up right after school being lucky enough to have a friend who worked at a software firm in Chicago, and at that time, the internet was kind of in its early days of getting people into IT in the data world, and ended up working for a big software firm in Chicago, and worked there for 4 years. So landed pretty well right after college in a really not so great job environment in that year.
And so that's where you are now, is in the Chicago, Illinois area?
No. I moved to Omaha in 1999 and went to work for a small railroad in Omaha.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So now after that 4 years of working in the software industry, then you get your job in the railroad industry.
Yeah, I went to work for Union Pacific in their headquarters there. So I got really lucky. Another friend of a friend situation helped me get the interview, and it was fantastic. In fact, actually, it's a good story. I'll tell it. So during my summers in college, while I was going to Beloit, I went out to Montana and I waited tables at the Isaac Walton Inn, which is a hotel on the BN main line.
All right, stop. All right, stop.
I know.
Now you're starting to annoy me. This guy, he's just starting to flat out annoy me. No, and then I went and got a job. I was out in Montana. This is all interesting stuff. See, this is why I wanted you on the podcast. This is all wildly interesting. People are going to eat this stuff up because so many people admire your company and love your products. They're going to be fascinated to hear all this stuff. All right, so at the Isaac Walton, you're in Montana. You got a job as a waiter at the Isaac Walton Inn. And how old were you?
This was after this was 2 summers during my college experience. So I was 19 and then 21 on those 2 separate summers. And I was lucky enough to drive out there and get the job with those guys at Isaac Walton Inn. Great people, family run. At that time, it was a family owned and operated hotel by a couple who were from Big Sandy, Montana. And they were kind of ranchers who had bought the hotel and turned it more into like a tourist hotel than it was at the time. And it became a rail fan mecca. I mean, it was great because I was waiting tables and meeting all these rail fans 24/7, and literally 150 feet out the front window of the restaurant where I worked was the BN Transcontinental Main Line there, the Seattle and Portland to Chicago Main Line. So it was fantastic.
So this is like 1997, 98, somewhere around there.
Actually, it was earlier. This is 90. This was 92 and 94. The summers of 92 and 94. So this is pre-BNSF. This is BN Cascade Green, 5 locomotives, 5 SD4-2s on the loaded grain trains, and just really neat stuff. And I was lucky enough while I was working there to, amongst the many people that I kept in touch with, was a guy who was from Union Pacific, and he was in the finance department, and he ended up being my boss at UP. He hired me. Let's see, that would have been, I met him in 92. I think it was 92, might have been 94. And he hired me in 1999. So yeah, got really lucky there. Stay in touch with people is the lesson there.
Yeah. So, Bruce, what do you think? Was that a good story?
I'd give her 7.9 out of 10.
Yeah, it's a good story.
It's a good story.
Yeah, George, what'd you think?
I would concur.
7.9, exactly the same score.
In the interest of keeping things uniform, yes.
Ron?
Yeah, make it 3, 7.9.
All right, okay. I was going to go higher than that.
Across the board.
Yeah, I was going to go higher than that. I was up around the 8.5 area, but okay. I'm sticking
with I mean, really, if you want to get really technical, mine was like 7.86, but I just round up.
Yeah, okay. I got it.
We'll throw out the high and the low anyhow, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
7.9 it is.
Take the median.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where you are. That's where you live now, is Omaha?
No. There's more to the story. So after I worked in...
Actually, I have a question. Why does the UP hire a guy with history majors? What possible use could they have with a guy that majored in history in university?
Well, Lionel, that's a great question that I get asked a lot. So what happened was the Union Pacific tried to absorb another railroad called the Southern Pacific, if you might remember your railroad history.
Right.
And when they hired SP, things didn't go so well, especially down in the southern United States and Texas and Louisiana. And they expanded and built a new department that was going to figure out things like why these acquisitions don't go so well. How do we measure the railroad better? How do we think about capacity at the railroad? How do we, what locomotives do we buy and why? And then how many people do we hire for crew bases and make sure we don't run out of crews? So those big key questions were the primary goal of this department at UP. And they wanted to have some out of the box thinkers because their normal MBA pool of people weren't really getting it, shall we say. And that was their goal, was to hire some non-traditional railroad people. So I was one of the non-traditional hires. There was another person that they hired as well as me. That was the only people that didn't have MBAs in the whole freaking building, probably. But yeah, that's how it worked. It's kind of a good story.
So you've worked for the UP for the last 20 years?
I worked for the UP until 2006, and then I left to get my MBA.
Okay, so then you have to go back to school full time.
Right, and I went to the University of Tennessee for that, and I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, which is where I still live. So you've now got the full biography in a very twisted, out-of-order way, and I apologize for that.
I don't think it's...
David, with all the moving around, have you been in some trouble with the law somewhere? You're on the run?
No, actually, everything's been good, and my wife has stuck with me, which is quite something. Yeah, so no, all is well. All is well.
And if you feel like...
Just wondering.
Yeah, and if you feel like there's anything you want to get off your shoulders or anything you want to say, Ron is... by day is a pastor at his local church, so he might be the fellow to talk to if you feel like you need to get something off your chest, you need to. Ron,
I've got a good listening ear.
Yeah, there you go. And you do reviews on quality products such as tangent scale models, right?
It has been known to happen, yes.
It is your microphone that's screwed up. Whatever you've done to it, Ron. Wherever you are, however you've plugged it into your, I bet you know what? I bet you you're not it's not going through your headset. I bet you it's going through your laptop. I'd bet any money. Okay, so at what time then, was it while you were at UP you started harassing people at these model railroad companies?
No, that was back when I was living in Chicago. I was harassing the Cato guys and the Lifelike guys about around then. And then while I was at UP, I started to talk with Chris Clune, who I'd mentioned earlier, who was doing quite a bit of tooling for Athearn, as well as all the branch line trains tooling, and a few other brands as well.
By tooling, do you mean like, don't they do most of that in China now?
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. And that's always kind of been the case, but Chris Clune at that time had a reputation of building some pretty good EMD locomotive tooling, and that was kind of his personal passion, and he set up a tool and die shop to do that.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I think this hobby is way bigger than anybody realizes, like way bigger than anybody realizes. And it's going to be social media. There's going to, over the next, who was I talking to about that today? I was talking to, don't tell me, let me guess, our buddy Tony Cook, the editor of Model Railroad News. I was talking to him about it, and I think in 20 years, this hobby is going to be way bigger than anybody realizes. So somewhere in there, after you worked for UP, and when you got out of graduate school, somewhere in there, you started getting the inkling that you wanted to have your own model producing company. Is that correct?
That is correct. I was working with Chris there in the 2000s, and then I actually got 2 free trips to China as a part of that process, and I got to know people over there, and yeah, I figured out that I wanted to do model trains in HO scale at a much higher level, and especially freight cars, where Chris's primary interest was in locomotives at the time. So I really wanted to, go into the freight car direction, and I was helping Chris with freight cars too, but I wanted to do my own and go my own direction there when things weren't really working out for me to hang on with him. So there you go. So I took it and ran.
So you just bolt up right one night in bed and went, I'm just going to make my own freight cars and I'm going to strike out. Like, how do you start a high-end freight car manufacturing company? Like, I mean, did you at first like kind of go, because so you had some knowledge of how the industry worked because you'd been to China and things like that. But how did you decide which was going to be your very first car?
The car that I chose as my very first car was one of my favorite grain hoppers, the Pullman Standard 4740. And the previous model, the old Athearn model from about 1975, really wasn't cutting it. And during the 90s, I had really stripped the Athearn models and rebuilt them for a friend's layout, and done a ton of detail work to them. And it was like, after a while, I was just like, this is a thankless job, and it's a ton of work, and there needs to be a better model. And that's how that first model came about. I wanted to do it better and ready to run with KDs standard and all metal wheels standard. And, I was like, why can't we have good freight cars that go behind, at that point were, pretty good locomotives. Of course, today they're much better. And, after things like, the Lifelike Jeep 30, for example, which is a pretty darn nice looking locomotive, you need good cars to go behind them.
What do you think is driving all this desire for more detail, higher end product? Because, it's almost like we've gone from the Athearn Blue Box phase. We got into some of the Lifelike Proto 1000 and 2000 things. And all of a sudden now everybody's offering these well-detailed quality models. So what do you think is driving that or drove that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the time when I started Tangent, there really wasn't anything else like Tangent for freight cars. That was right when Jason at Rapido had started the first passenger car in his line. That was when, some of the locomotives were starting to have metal grab irons, that kind of thing, and not plastic grab irons. So, yeah, I mean, I just felt, it was time to do that in the next round of high quality stuff in HO. And I think the market has kind of come along with that, leading companies like Tangent and Rapido and some of the others, right? You kind of, you're pushing the envelope as a manufacturer, and the clientele, some of them hate it and don't follow you, and some of them come with you. So I make no bones about it. I want my models to look like the real thing. And when I spend, a couple of days weathering a car, at the end of it, I want it to look like a real thing. And when you compare that to a lesser quality model, for example, you can see those differences. So to me, that's worth something. And I'm not talking about just detail. I'm talking about paint and lettering. I'm talking about color choices. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm just going with my head. I think maybe those Katie 40-foot boxcars are sort of the leading edge of all this, because I think they're, what, 40, 45, 50 bucks some time. And everybody said you'll never sell any of them, but they're selling like hotcakes because it was kicking up the detail thing. So, It's nice that it's coming along. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely should give a nod to KD, which I did not do. That is absolutely true. And the kicker is that KD was doing it, almost a full 10 years earlier than that. And the second kicker is that they were doing it in America. And I guess a third kicker there would be, they invented a different kind of a process for their models. If you take one apart, you see that it's not put together with glue and doesn't have traditional grab irons and that kind of thing. It's a different assembly process to make it economic to do it here in America.
Yeah, but then the key is really the Tangent. After KD, Tangent was really the first company to, were you aware of the fact? Did you have some sense, or I don't know even what the right way to word this question is, but did you have a sense of this is what you were going to do, is you were going to push the hobby forward?
I, in retrospect, can't really answer that, but I think that was my goal. I think that was my goal for myself. My modeling standards have always been pretty high for myself. I don't build a lot of models, but when I do, I try to really build them well. I have a lot of friends that are prototype modelers, and I admire their work as well. And I felt that could be done on a mass production basis for everybody to enjoy. So, yeah.
Okay. So do you have a layout now?
I do. Yeah, I do. I'm building a layout that depicts Spokane, Washington in 1973, specifically the Milwaukee Road Yard in Spokane, which is a small industry yard. And when I say small, it's about 10 tracks. So it's not tiny, but it's a basement, a basement sized yard that you can fit on a 20-something foot wall.
Right.
And yeah, that's my primary focus, is that. And then there's a whole bunch of industries that surround that yard, because it's kind of built in an industrial part of town. So lots of local industry switching and yard switching. And then there's some pretty interesting operating things that are there. For instance, there's interchanges to and from the UP and the BN in 1973. All the automobiles that were delivered in open auto racks to Spokane, whether they came in on the UP or the BN or the Milwaukee, they were all emptied at the Milwaukee yard. So there's a whole bunch of interesting operating features there. I'm really into operating railroad history for certain, for any railroad, but specifically that part of the world. I love the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world, and yet you didn't really spend any time there.
Well, I had those summers in Montana. That really kicked it off, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, those summers in Montana had me fall in love with the Great Northern, and then the Northern Pacific after that, and then the Milwaukee Road after that. So, and then I worked for UP. So yeah, I've kind of got ties to all four of them in a way.
It's a really interesting history of how you got here. So, okay, so that first, it was the NMRA train show in Detroit at the big NMRA National Convention. So it must have been, the cars arrived on time and you went to Detroit, and were you you must have been kind of filled with quite a bit of trepidation when the show opened that first day.
Yeah, it was a very scary time in my life, because I had made this humongous investment to bring cars to a train show and sell them with no previous announcement. So when I showed up there and started selling, all these people walked by and didn't really look very carefully. And then by the end of the day, my booth was mobbed because people were like, what the heck? What the heck's going on here? Not only are these cars gorgeous, but I can buy them from you right now. I can give you a credit card. I was like, yep, you sure can. And we sold them right on the floor of that show that first day. A lot of people that first day were shocked. A lot of people also thought that it was Intermountain custom painted stuff because it was a Pullman covered hopper. So I had to explain that. Some people thought it was Athearn custom painted stuff, and I was like, no, look at the detail. No disrespect to Athearn, but their 4740 covered hopper was tooled in 1975, so it's not cutting edge in that way. But yeah, I mean, it was a shock. I showed up at that show with a large Ford Econoline rented van full of models. I had no idea what I was doing.
Which is cool. Like that's, like I was kidding you at the start, but that's one of the things that has drawn me to you is, you take it extremely seriously. You're obviously a good businessman, but you also have the ability to relay the story in a way that's, like you say, you had no idea what you were doing, which is really, when you think about it, the investment and everything is like, you just went out there and you wanted to do this, and you kind of hung on for dear life to see what was going to happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
So where was your wife in all of this? Was she like, how did you convince her? How did you convince yourself? That's a better question. How did you convince yourself? What was it that made you think that this was a good idea? Because from what I know of manufacturing models these days, is there's a large upfront investment to create the tooling and everything. You have to create an association or a working relationship with a factory in China. So there's a lot of upfront expense before you sell one single freight car. So do you remember what it was how you convinced yourself this was a good idea?
That's a great question. I had a series of ups and downs, shall we say, on that road. It takes a lot of fortitude to really decide that you're going to do that. And it takes a lot of negotiating with a spouse that you're going to, mortgage your house to buy tooling. And, oh, by the way, we need to, come up with another that same amount of money a second time to actually run the production on that tooling. So, yeah, I mean, it's a humongous leap of faith. So people like Tangent or other brands like Exactrail or Moloko or some of those other brands, like even Jason, I guess, it's a leap of faith. You're really just going, and if you look back, you're probably not going to do it.
Okay, well, this would lead into my perfect argument how I say the hobby's growing, and so many manufacturers will say, well, I don't think it's growing, it's kind of changing and blah, blah, blah. I mean, for you to have that much faith in going, yeah, these are going to sell, I think it must be kind of a strange, not strange, I don't know what the word would be, but I get the sense that the guys like you that are the leading manufacturers, I get it. You're not making billions of dollars. Like, I get that. You're not making billions of dollars. But at some point, you had to think to yourself, this is a good business model because people are going to buy these things. And as it turns out, they did, because people are always looking for quality products. I think a lot of that, too, is people are fascinated by miniatures. And the better the miniature is, the more drawn to it they are. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think I think that's exactly what motivates people. And I think I said this to you one of our times we've chatted. I don't know if it was the last one or the time before that, but I think that people are at the point in their lives where they want certain things, and when they see it, they buy it. And I think we have a more advanced market right now. And you say it's growing. I agree, but I think that part of its growth is because a lot of the people have more money these days than they did 10, 15 years ago, thanks to things like the stock market or, higher paying jobs or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But I think the hobby, I will, I'll go to my, well, we won't talk about that, but I'll go along in the future and thinking to myself that the social media has we were self-isolating in this hobby until social media came along and exposed all of our, it's just like this, like nobody would have, this is a great interview. You're a fun guy to talk to and people are going to like it. And you're going to find out a whole lot about you. And you couldn't publish this in a model railroading magazine. And now for the first time in the entire 100-year history of the hobby, there's an opportunity to meet David Lehlbach in a way that nobody would have before, which will make them appreciate your models even more. I think that's what I've discovered from the podcast is, people, gives people a connection to you even more than they had before. And I'm convinced that social media is just going to make this hobby explode all over the place, and we're all going to be covered in model railroad goo, or not.
On that note, I don't know how to answer that. I'm struggling with the terms model railroad goo, but I'll just come back and say, I think that the growth of the hobby is good. I think that there are a lot of vendors in the hobby that are supplying a lot of product into the hobby, and at some point, I'm not sure that the hobby has enough dollars for that product, but maybe it does. I'm not sure. But I will say that I'm confident in where my company is going, and I like what we do, and our customers give us a lot of feedback on both the good and the bad, and we try to run with that as best we can.
Yeah, I guess I get the same feeling from you that I get from Jason Schron, that you guys are very approachable. You like to talk about what you're doing, and you're enjoying it as much as you can. So how many cars has Tangent produced now since 2007?
I think we're up to 23.
Wow, that's a lot. And I mean, I love it when, like I was telling everybody I was telling everybody within the weeks after Springfield, I went up to David Lehlbach around 11 o'clock on Saturday morning of the Springfield show, and I walked up to the booth and I says, "Hey David, hey David, we do an interview now?" And you were just like, you guys were buried alive trying to keep up with all the people that were at your booth. It's just amazing to watch. And you had released that caboose, which when I was sitting there interviewing you on Sunday, I think it was, you sold 3 or 4 of them while I was sitting there. Like that has been wildly popular, has it not?
Yeah, the caboose has been very popular. That was another project where you walk in and you just don't know what's gonna happen at that show. You walk in with a van full of product and you hope that people like it as much as you think they're going to. But yeah, the caboose has been a great seller. We're doing very specific, targeted, era-appropriate cabooses with all their proper lights and their proper details, and those things take a lot of patience on our side and tooling dollars on our side, because I swear to God, cabooses are modified more than locomotives were. They received the most attention from railroad shops. I swear. I mean, it's amazing. They're just amazingly detailed, and the changes over time that you have to document and put correctly into your model are things that a lot of customers, I think, are now appreciating. But we weren't really trying to do a generic one-size-fits-all product. It's just like our freight cars. They're very era appropriate.
Yeah, I think you're being kind of modest there when you say it's being successful, because looking on your website, all of your product line on that one are all sold out except for maybe one of them.
That's right. We have a few kits left, literally less than 10, I think, at this point. But we have sold out the entire first production. That's correct.
So David, what I would call that is wildly successful.
Yeah,
I think that's more appropriate.
Well, I appreciate that, guys. We're really excited about it, and we've got another run of those coming. And we don't like it when we don't satisfy everybody. And we've had a lot of people that have been upset because they didn't get their caboose and they couldn't find it, or they found it on eBay and it was already up to $130. Which is well north of what the retail price is. And I get that, and that doesn't make me happy. So, we'll come back and do more. But, we're learning. We're trying to figure out cabooses. It's a new thing for us. So,
So do you see Tangent doing more non-revenue equipment in the future?
The answer to that question is a firm yes. We have several cabooses in various states of coming. Yes.
I knew this would be a good interview. I'm really mad at you, David, because it was harder to get you to settle down than it should have been. I'm really... there's going to be some unpleasantness between the two of us over the next little while.
Okay.
Well, hey, before we move on, and while we're on the topic of successful models, if I could ask, David, y'all made your first venture into N-scale in, was it 2018 with the quad hopper? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And I noticed you've produced another run of those last year, so obviously you had some success there. As an N-scaler, I would be remiss of me not to ask how the N-scale market is looking for you, and how that how that model is done, and maybe what you're thinking about N-scale, some more N-scale in the future.
Yeah, so we're taking N-scale kind of one model at a time. That's another new market, kind of like cabooses, where we weren't sure what people would buy and what people won't buy. We're learning about N-scale in the sense that we're trying to figure out if high fidelity N-scale is really an equally sized market to HO scale high fidelity. And what I mean is, do N-scalers really appreciate that? And I've been hearing it on two fronts from N-scalers. The first front is the guys that are the T-track kind of crowd are unhappy because the cars don't operate on 9.5-inch radius curves, that kind of thing.
Right. Because that quad hopper had like a minimum radius of like 18 3/4, if I remember.
Yeah, we're advertising it, I think it's 15, but yeah, and honestly, you can easily get it down to 13 or 11. We've documented that on our site, but
yeah,
we designed it to be a prototype looking N-scale car, which meant that it has pin lifters on it, or a couple of lift bars, if you will. It has a narrow coupler box. It's got side key detail on the side of the coupler box that looks like an actual coupler box, not just a rectangle blob. And they have rubber air hoses. And because of all those things, it restricts the travel for the wheels. And, 9.5-inch radius in N-scale is, nothing approaching a prototype radius unless you operate trolleys. So let's just call a spade. And I'm okay with doing this and alienating some N-scalers, but I am not targeting the T-track crowd. I don't believe that those are the guys that are wanting to, buy my product. I would love it if they did, but I don't think I can make products for that kind of a tight radius situation. So that's been a problem. But the positive side is, the prototype-based guys are just ecstatic because there's been guys waiting for years to see some of the tangent HO products make their way into N-scale. And of course, we had an agreement with Craig Martin of BLMA when Craig was, active in model railroading, and he was doing N-scale versions of a few of our cars. We had agreed to do together, or he would do, obviously, and those were really well received, and the market really liked that. So I would like to do more N-scale to answer your question. The real question is, do I aim towards the T-track crowd and 9.5-inch radiuses, or 9 3/4 radiuses, or do I, do we keep it like what we've done already? So that's a big open question for us right now. That's kind of stymied development on N-scale.
Sure.
Yeah, I think your answer though is that you've kind of set the target or the bar for yourself of what you've been doing in HO. So, to go anything less than that in N-scale would be kind of shooting yourself in the foot, I would think.
And I think there's a real market for high detail, high fidelity, N-scale stuff. I mean, the success of things from other manufacturers that are shooting for that kind of level of high detail, I think indicates that. And you're right, not everybody, the guys that are running, 9 3/4 or even 11-inch radius, and are probably not your target market. And granted, that market's not going to be the same size as the HO market, but I think I can vouch for a good portion of the N-scale community to say that there's some desire and demand out there for those high. There are the guys that want to photograph their stuff, want to have that high end detail. May not be the everyday operators necessarily, but that really are looking for that high detail, high fidelity.
Well, you know what you ought to do. You know what you ought to do, Ron. You ought to get in contact with David and see if maybe he would send you a car or two that you could review on one of your videos on Ron's Trains and Things, because you have like almost 30,000 subscribers, so he'd probably get quite a bit of, And
I'd love to do that, and maybe after the show, Dave and I can have a conversation.
Yeah, I don't think.
Well, we knew that was coming.
Yeah, I don't think you and David should be having a conversation without me being involved.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I really don't.
Moderation.
Yeah, moderation. There you go. David, I think it's important for people to realize how much of a quality individual you are, which is what adds to the quality of your company. Like I've had the opportunity now. I would say basically we're friends now, or maybe I'm overstepping my bounds, but like I think it's a quality person who runs a quality company ends up producing a quality product, and you seem very devoted to your customers and producing a product that you can be proud of and that they can be proud to own. Does that sound like something?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we totally want our customers to have a great buying experience, and the quality is not only with the products. I mean, the products have excellent quality. We try very hard to make sure that they operate well, which means that they're heavy. They're not over NMRA, but we definitely shoot for NMRA. Our open coal hoppers are almost at NMRA weight, which is a big deal in HO scale, because in HO especially, you usually have a plastic body, so it's hard to get your coal hoppers to the right weight. We do that. We do very well with getting all of our freight cars our other freight cars to the right weight. Our cabooses are very heavy because we want people to think like the prototype did, and the chassis system and B&O both shoved on their cabooses. So with their helper sets, so our cabooses are the right weight so that they can be at the rear end of a train with a helper set coupled up to them. And we try really hard. Like, we go really, really deep into the quality side of things. Our cars have fully detailed underframes with proper bolsters, and we make them look right as best we can. Our newest thing is we've been releasing freight cars with different roller bearings on them, so the roller bearings turn, which was an innovation back in the 90s from Cato, probably, or even a little bit before that from a few others. But really, Cato was the one who really mastered that and made them roll well. We've done that with our 100-ton truck, but we've offered different roller bearing caps for them to imitate the Timkins, the Brencos, the different types of Brencos, the Hyatts. Those are coming. I shouldn't be talking about things that are coming, but Hyatts are coming. So we go to very deep levels to have a really great quality product. And on top of that, the buying experience is something that we want our customers to be happy with. We provide pretty darn fast shipping from our warehouse here in North Carolina. We sell to brick and mortar hobby shops, and we encourage brick and mortar hobby shops because we believe they provide a function and a service to the model railroad hobby. I spent my high school years in a hobby shop. I want other kids to do the same thing. So, yeah. So there you are.
Here's a question. Your caboose. What made you go with a bay window caboose instead of a more traditional cupola type caboose?
To me, I wasn't really differentiating between, bay styles or whatever, but to me, it was more of the cabooses that needed to be done. I made a list of what I consider to be the cabooses that should be done well. And that specific B&O class has never been offered in resin or in plastic or even in brass. So that was a great choice for a prototype that I felt was low risk of a collision with someone else.
Yeah, and by collision, you mean another manufacturer ended up making it at the same time or near the same time kind of thing?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's collisions in the hobby, in my view, are very negative and do no one any good, honestly. And I take great steps to avoid them, wherever possible.
And do you feel like do the companies have some sort of working relationship, or is it kind of like everybody is cloak and dagger, or can you give us any insight into that, or would you rather not?
I'll give you some insight into it. I will say that some of the companies do talk to each other about specific projects. Some companies keep it pretty cloak and dagger, and other companies are very open. So it's really somewhere between all those. I just gave you a middle, a low, and a high. So, it's various levels. I will say that. We try to communicate with other companies on projects where we think we might have a problem, but it's really hard to know. And Tangent does not pre-release or pre-announce projects before we actually do them. And a lot of manufacturers announce projects, several years in advance before they even cut any steel, or in some cases even do any design. We don't do it that way. We we go and take all the risk, and then we bring the stuff out without a pre-order. And when we announce it on our website, it is for sale immediately. And after 13 years, people, still are confused by that. I get phone calls all the time. Well, when is this going to be released? I'm like, that caboose has already, been released. It's for sale right now, So.
So what kind of a lead time are you looking at there from, say, one of your general GATX tank cars there? You've come up, you're going to produce this. How long from that process we decide on it is until we see the product rolling into your warehouse for shipping?
It's usually about maybe a year and a half from the time that we actually start the process of product making. The research and design phase goes way before that. I am a very prolific buyer of slides on eBay. I am a very prolific studier of freight cars. I always have been. It starts from those years of the Isaac Walton, honestly, looking at cars roll by all day long. That's really what fueled my passion for freight cars. And I just totally geek out on researching equipment. So that R&D phase goes back years, and I really have no shortage of cars I'd like to do. It's just a matter of time.
Okay, so that's a question I've been asking myself for a while now. It's like, is there are enough cars then to keep everybody going? There's that many different railroad cars to keep everybody going, is there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on your perspective. I think that Tangent is willing to take more risks on some cars than maybe other manufacturers might be. I'm not sure. I don't know the perspective of them, but I believe that, yes, there are certain cars that still need to be done. If everybody attacked freight cars and dropped locomotives, the market would be saturated quickly. I think that the market for freight cars is not as big as the market for locomotives. And I think that is a potential stumbling block for a lot of freight cars in the market.
Oh, really? Okay. A stumbling block because people just aren't that interested in as they are in locomotives. I mean, your freight cars, for the quality that they are reasonably priced, I think.
Yeah, I could go a number of ways here. So I think that the cars are extremely reasonably priced when you look at the part count and the paint accuracy, and then the stenciling accuracy of our models, and the fact that they actually have real KDs, not knockoff metal ones or plastic ones. And we also have all metal wheels on our products. Yeah, I mean, our stuff is, I feel, very fairly priced relative to the market, especially recently. There's a lot of vendors, and I won't be shy to say this, there are a lot of vendors that are coming up to my price point that do not have a commensurate product quality level. And, that's not up to me to point out. I think consumers can see that for themselves, but I sure notice it. I'm a modeler. I see that stuff. I look at what everybody else does. My 4750 covered hoppers have more than 150 parts on each of them. And that's a $49 car right now. And if you divide 150, if you divide $150 by $49, you see the part count per dollar. It's an interesting thing. Compare that to a shake the box kit.
Yeah, for sure. And how do you maintain quality? Like, do you travel to China very much, or is it done all via email and what have you?
Yeah, I go to China. Yep. Me and sometimes one of the guys that works for Tangent, we go to China. Yep, we sure do. We have to. It's part of the keeping the company going and doing things the way that you want to do it.
And how many guys do you have working for you now?
Tangent has 2 full-time employees besides myself.
Okay, are you full-time there now? Because I know you weren't.
Yeah, I waffle back and forth with some consulting for the railroad world as well. So I do a little bit of everything. But yeah, I spend a lot of time on Tangent. I spend a lot of my weekends and nights on Tangent. So it's a full-time job.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
Were you affected by the factory shutdown in China at all, or you were different people?
Yeah, I was. Tangent was kind of affected by that. I think everybody was affected by that, to be honest. Whether you were there or not, you were kind of affected by it because you spent so much time talking about it. But yeah, Tangent's one of the many companies that was kind of involved in that factory. But I don't really dwell on that. It's more about the relationship that you have with your factory, not necessarily with just one specific factory having a problem. There's a lot of ways to produce models over there.
Well, you were telling me that you offer some of your cars painted but not lettered. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We produce unpainted black tank cars so that people can just decal on them. We produce unpainted. I shouldn't say this right. I'm not saying this right. We produce black painted tank cars that you can decal on. We produce Pennsylvania and PC and Conrail box cars that are ready for Pennsylvania PC and Conrail decals. So they're the right colors and they're glossy, so you can decal right on them. Yeah, we do that.
And do you ever put decals on them?
We have offered decals in the past for specific targeted things like extra road numbers on coal hoppers. But no, when we print things, we don't use decals. We do full on tampo printing machines. To tampo print the lettering and the ACI labels and all the other things.
That went right by him, didn't it?
Yeah, went right by him. He stood there like the house on the side of the road. Watch that one go by.
Yeah, he was expecting an inside curve, and I just threw him heat right down the middle, and he just waved at it as it went by. You said decals, and then I said decals, so I was being a smartass.
I said decals. I was trying to be a smartass. I was converting it to Canadian for you.
There you go. I love your.
I speak a little Canadian. I get up there once in a while.
Do you? Where do you go? Why would you come to Canada? Why are you coming to Canada?
I like Canada. I get up there once in a while to visit with the Class 1 railroads, and I rode the Canadian last year for fun, which was just an amazing experience. I rode it from Toronto all the way to Vancouver, and that was just a life-affirming event. I mean, that is just bucket list material there. That was so neat. You were in Toronto and you didn't tell me? I'm sorry. I stopped by Credit Valley. That's where I spent my time. Well, you could have sent me. We got to become. Are you avoiding me? Am I misinterpreting the fact that we're becoming more and more acquainted with each other? Am I misinterpreting that? No, you're not misinterpreting that. You mentioned that earlier, and I appreciate it. I am not a Leafs fan, though. I just want you to know. You're not. Are you at least an original? No. Are you at least an original Six fan? I am in two ways. I grew up as a Rangers fan, and I became a Chicago fan. Wow. So who would you, if it was Chicago and the Rangers in the playoffs, who would you be rooting for? I'd probably have to root for Chicago, but that would be a tough one. I really like the Rangers right now with Panarin. Yeah, exactly. Of course, he's a former Blackhawk, but we don't have to go there. I can't believe they fired Joel Quenneville. Like, what is that all about? That was crazy. I am totally with you on that. And I don't know, are you guys going to get Bruce Boudreau? No, we got who do we have? We have our coach now. Oh, you do? Yeah. I thought that was an open question.
Sheldon Kennedy.
Yeah, we took the guy from the AHL team, and everybody was really high on him, so they moved him up. They gave what's his name, the old Hevo. What was his name?
Babcock,
yeah. Although my son has Mike Babcock's cell phone number, so if we need him, we can get a hold of him. Well, I thought I was reading in the blogosphere just like 3 days ago that Bruce Boudreau's name is coming up in Toronto, at least in the fan base, is something that should happen. But yeah, I don't know about that. I like Bruce Boudreau, but I don't think he's Stanley Cup material. I think he's almost Stanley Cup material. Well, and for the listeners that are listening to this in July or June or whenever this thing is going to be released, this might be really old news, so don't hold it against us. No, exactly. And it all depends when your check arrives as to when it gets released. Oh, wow. So I want to talk about, what kind of consulting work do you do for the full-size railroads? I do some operating and strategy type work for the Class 1 railroads and a few other railroads as well. I've done that kind of as my other job in my life. Yeah. Really? And is that all because of your association with the Union Pacific? That's because of my experience with the UP. Yeah, that's right. Yep. So you do, don't talk about anything you don't want to talk about, but you do somehow the Class 1 railroads have turned to you or knowing you probably just called them up and said you're doing this wrong. But somehow the Class 1 railroads are in contact with you to help them with operations and movements and that sort of thing. You can't just...
Yeah, that's right. I work with a full-on railroad consulting team that's part of a larger company, larger consulting firm, and yeah, we're on a first name basis with the executives at all the Class 1s, and we help them out with all kinds of different things. My team that I am part of right now helped put together the various rail mergers in the 90s and helped to forecast what the railroads would look like what a CN and BNSF merger would look like when those two had proposed a merger. So yeah, we do that kind of strategy work, and we do other kinds of special projects, just special stuff. So
Okay.
that's stuff I can generally talk about, but it's really interesting, so.
You can tell us. There's nobody listening.
Right.
Okay, here's a question for you. It's a little off topic, off a tangent, but I got a couple more things I want to ask you about that. But so once I started doing this podcast, I became more and more aware of how many good-sized regional railroads there are. I'm surprised more people don't model some of these regional railroads that are running, SD40-2s and cheap 40s and stuff like that. Like, there seems to be a lot of decent-sized regional railroads in North America. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting trend. I mean, regional railroads have been kind of sprouting up since the 80s, like Wisconsin Central, Montana Rail Link, for example. There's kind of a move afoot from some of the Class 1s to reacquire their own short lines, though. There's some of that going on. So, there's a lot of, ebbs and flows in the rail business, for sure. But yeah, and back to modeling, I think, regional railroads are, really key these days for a lot of modelers. And I think a lot of manufacturers have catered to that pretty well. I mean, I can think of Atlas producing, New England Central Power, and I don't know. I think it's, pretty well documented in the model world that, people want things. For example, our B&O caboose, one of them was bought by the Susquehanna, and the Susquehanna guys are screaming for Tangent to do that.
Oh, really? Yeah, that'd be cool. And that's what I wanted to ask you. I wanted to get back to. So how did you decide that you wouldn't be one of these companies that, does pre-orders and all that? Is it just that you've run your company so well that you've gotten ahead of the curve and you can pretty much do whatever you want, and you try to be as knowledgeable and try to make all the right decisions? But, is it like, what was it that made you not go down that road, which seems to be the standard way of doing business in that industry now with other manufacturers?
I don't really have anything against the pre-order system per se. I just don't feel it's necessary. I feel like you put your money where your mouth is. I produce the models, and then if people like them, they buy them, and if they don't like them, they don't buy them, or they buy them 4 years later when they've been thinking about buying it and they haven't done it yet. So people have different habits for what they buy and that kind of thing, and I don't think either way really is better per se, but I do view that the way that I do it is effective when you have a good quality product and you can just release it, just drop it and go. And it takes some of the drama out of it. I don't market Tangent probably as well as I could, in the sense that I don't have a lot of, fancy blogs and funny videos and I don't do the things that a lot of the other guys do. I don't go to tons of train shows, for example, too. I only go to a few. So, I let the product kind of lead on its own, and that's where I spend my cycles.
And how do you decide which train shows to go to? How many would you do a year?
Well, that's a great question. We try to do the national every year when there is a national. It's been canceled this summer for St. Louis, as you guys probably know. But the national is a fixture that we try to go to because I feel that it's a good time of year to have a train show and see people. And, the affiliation with the NMRA is important, I think, for the benefit of the hobby. There are some manufacturers that don't like the national because the attendance has been poor. There's also some manufacturers that dislike the national, and this is one reason why I don't like it. The only reason I don't like it is because they force us to do it on a Sunday in the summer after a full day Friday and a full day Saturday. There is no need for a third day.
Right.
And I've been vocal with the NMRA about that as for years, because it's a ghost town on Sunday. And no offense to my fellow manufacturers, but I don't want to be just chatting it up all day with the other manufacturers on a Sunday in July when I could be outside rail fanning or being with my wife and kids. So
right.
But I will. Sorry, a little diatribe there. But yeah, the other shows that we go to are Train Fest in Milwaukee, which is a big one, and we love going there. We've been going there from the beginning because we produce covered hoppers, and that was what we started with, and that's always been a good show for us because of our product base. And then we do Springfield, and we've done Springfield off and on since we started. In the first few years, it was mostly off and a little bit of on. And now here in the past, I think it's 6 years or 7 years running, I've gone consistently every year to Springfield. And that's been a great show for us. And then we also try to do a handful of prototype modeler meets around the nation. So we especially focus on the St. Louis one because that's the biggest one of them all. And that's the one to be at. So.
And why have RPM meets been taken off so well? I'm fascinated by them. I'm fascinated by the fact that there is no rules, there's no organization to be a part of, and yet they all have the same name. The RPM, it's like the NERPM, or MARPM, or they're always that and RPM, and they seem to have just grown naturally. Like, any idea why that is, or is it just simply because the registration is low? It's a different, people are, everybody seems to have embraced the fact that, you try not, there's none of that, look what I can do and you can't kind of thing. There's no contests.
Yeah, that's changed a lot. You're right. In the 90s, I went to all of the Naperville RPMs when I lived in Chicago, and then even when I lived in Omaha. I used to go back to Chicago for those. That was put on by Sunshine Models, the original Sunshine Models, which is a resin company, if you might remember. It's no longer in business because the owner died. But Sunshine Prototype Modeler Meet was the place to go. It had about 200 people every year, and it was a big deal in the fall. And yeah, it was a lot of model comparing, and you show your weathered, all custom done and weathered models, and that was a big camaraderie thing. And then vendors started to participate and sell products there. And then I think more lately, the RPM community has been a little bit more friendly to those that are kind of beginners at prototype modeling or weathering equipment and that kind of thing. And it's more hands-on. There's full-on at least the St. Louis one. There's full-on clinics where you can learn about weathering, and you can actually sit with someone who's a professional, person who's been doing it for years, and he'll show you how to do it right in front of you, and he'll, loan you the medium to do it. If you don't bring your own, you bring a car, and, you can borrow his stuff. And it's just, they've become much more accommodating, I think, to the wider hobby. And I think that's a good thing. And that's why you have, like the St. Louis meet has grown to something like 650 people, which is probably, at least 2x the nearest size prototype modeler meet, maybe even 3. But that one, of course, benefits also from being, in a central location and that kind of thing. What's
your wife's name and your kids' names?
My wife's name is Heather, and my kids' name are Henry and Lucy.
Hey, Heather. Hey, Henry and Lucy. In case they end up listening to this, you want to make sure that you mention them.
Yeah, they will not listen to this. I assure you that.
Well, hardly anybody is, and apparently they won't be either.
Right. I hope someone's listening to this. Otherwise, we're wasting a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've never had any indication that anybody is, but we're hoping to someday.
You should be doing some stats on your website, Lionel.
I should be doing some stats on the website. We've had over 500,000 downloads in 5 years.
Well, I think then that means something's going right.
Yeah, that's probably.
You know what? Every time I've done an interview with you, I've always had people say, "Oh, I listened to you on Modeler's Life." So
there you go. Exactly.
Every time. So I know someone is listening, and I'm not just, BSing that. I just remembered that's actually a thing. You say that to me quite a bit. People say a lot of things to me. It's kind of exhausting, all the things that I get told. And I love to hear people's stories and stuff, but sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, okay, so wait, this person did this, and you get to know all your client base pretty darn well with time. So it's a fun thing.
That's the thing. Like, your enthusiasm for the hobby is very obvious, and I think that's probably what we've managed to emphasize during this interview is your enthusiasm for the hobby. Is like, I knew it'd be fun to talk to you, and I knew there'd be a ton of stuff to find out about you. I just could tell, and I mean, it's your enthusiasm for the hobby obviously spills over into your company because you just love the hobby and you love to produce these cars. Like, it's cool to see it. And like, the podcast is probably the best thing I ever did in the hobby because I've met so many interesting people. Otherwise you and I would just have had, I might have bought some cars and said hey to you and stuff like that. And you know me as a name as a customer, but I'll bet you a lot of your customers are repeat customers. They're probably every time you release a car, they're probably pretty excited that you have.
Yeah. I mean, we have customers that have been with Tangent from day one. We have customers that buy a product every month. We have customers that you hear from every couple of years and they buy a product. And I have customers that you literally hear from once a month, and they're repeat guys constantly, So, I mean, it's really the gambit of things. And then, I have other customers that say, oh, I buy all my stuff at, Credit Valley in Toronto. And, it's my favorite store. It's like, okay, great. I'm glad you're supporting your local hobby shop. That's perfect. We'll keep sending them to those guys. So, yeah. So, we're pretty darn enthusiastic about it. And I do, I like the products a lot. That's kind of what fuels me is I just love freight cars and now cabooses a lot. I've kind of become obsessed with cabooses, which is just a dangerous thing to become obsessed with now because it's like my entire product line is going to become cabooses. But, but it's great. It's super fun. And, it just twiddles the brain because you're learning more and more about things that you didn't know. I mean, that's the beauty of model trains and real trains is there's always more to learn, like there's this, you're never done, yeah. It's not like doing a jigsaw puzzle where, you put in that last piece and you're like, okay, I'm done. You're never done with model trains. There's always more.
Yeah. Explain that to me. Would you explain what you think? Is that it? Is that basically what you think makes the hobby tick? Because that is one of the things, like you're never done. And now again, I'm rambling. I've said this. I apologize to everybody that's listening. I know I say it on a ad nauseum basis, but now we're able to connect with each other so much easier. Easier. Is that a word? Easier.
There you go.
Yeah,
it is now.
Yeah, it is now.
It has
I'm
been
going to use that. I'm going to use that this week twice.
Yeah. Use that. Would you please? Easier.
Absolutely.
Lionel says it's easier to do that.
Turn to my wife and say, "You make my life easier."
I have a vocabulary of like 27 words. Okay, we're going to finish up here, but David, I'm going to say something to you that's going to sound incredibly rude, and I apologize in advance because I know I'm not going to say this right, but it's something I feel like I want to tell you because I think it's important. So you are so you're so engaged with the hobby and with trains and railroading that. And I've seen you at the booth sometimes, and I mean, sometimes you can seem like a pretty serious guy, but I think people need to know that what people need to know about you is that under that presidential gruff exterior of a guy that's trying to sell cars and get these cars out, you are really underneath all, you are really just somebody that loves the hobby and loves his customers as much as he loves the projects that he's making. Like, I think it's important for people to realize how much you enjoy the customers that buy your products. I think that's as much of anything. I get the sense that, I've seen you selling cars to people. Actually this year I did for a while. I stood and just watched you guys on the Saturday morning, and I could see you trying to engage with everybody that wanted to buy your product. And I think it's important for people to know that that not only are you just interested in selling them cars and making a couple of bucks, but you're interested in improving their model railroading experience. I think that was pretty rude the way it came out.
Yeah, I mean, it shows it's hard to judge my gruff exterior, to put it in your words there. But, there's some truth to that. I could see why you might say that. It's hard, like I think I told you this last time we talked. When you're at a show, it's exhausting. And, you just getting to the show is exhausting. And, we're not millionaires. We don't have, lackeys that are putting together our booth and putting the stuff on there. If you got the chance to go to a train show, which you guys probably do, but most people don't have a chance to go to a train show on setup day. I mean, you see Shane from Scale Trains setting up the booth with Paul, and it's me setting up my booth with Dan, and it's it's Nick Molo setting up his booth, and everybody's setting up their own their own booths. I mean, this is a small business, kind of enterprise. But yeah, it's fueled by passion and by desire for my customer experience to be really strong. I mean, I want to have my clients want to buy more cars. And it's been like that since day one. That's why we've sold direct, from day one, because we want that opportunity to interface with the customers directly. And, hobby shops are a great way to do it too. I will always say that. But, when people question me like, well, I can't get this from my hobby shop. And I'm like, well, it's in stock. So, you can buy it from our website. I'm not sure why you can't get it from your hobby shop. But, we try really hard to have everybody have a great experience with Tangent. And I like to shake hands with people and thank them for their business personally. Even if I don't talk to them during their transaction at the booth, I will often, go run up to somebody and say, thanks for your business, because to me, it's business the old-fashioned way with a handshake. And that's how I want to do it. Now, we have a new problem called COVID-19. So I don't know how that's going to work in the future. But I guess we'll just have to be really good with, elbow bumps, or just, giving each other a peace sign or something as we walk away. But
yeah, peace, man. I can imagine you at Woodstock.
A thumbs up. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I can imagine you. So everybody, people are always probably constantly asking you to make a certain caboose. So is there any chance you could make the Erie Lackawanna C372?
Why that one?
I don't know.
I'm just curious.
Because I
know which one you're talking about, but why that one?
And of course you do. Because I Googled bay window caboose images, and just so I could ask you to build a particular, because that must be what's constantly people coming up to you say, have you there's a market for the C372 caboose. Have you ever thought of doing that?
Yeah, I get free marketing advice every day from people, which is great. I love the fact that people are enthusiastic about it. And, I do listen to those requests for sure. I am pretty darn versed in cars, and I kind of know what I like to do. So it does help to affirm where I think the market is. There are some cabooses that people want that probably will be done by Tangent. There are cabooses that people want that will never be done by Tangent, that I just don't see enough market to do it in plastic. I mean, we're talking about a plastic caboose investment, we were talking about a ton of money. It's a lot more in the freight car because there's more complexity, and the risk is a lot higher because it's only for one railroad usually, because cabooses are so specific. There's no such thing as generic cabooses unless you're a model railroad manufacturer who likes to slap, a bunch of paint schemes on the same caboose, which we are not doing. We're doing very specific road specific cabooses.
Yeah. So could you do like Conrail 21-2?
Yeah, you never know. 21-283 might be one of them. Yep. You never
know. So is the caboose the best seller you've ever had? Is it surprised you more than you expected, or has there been what was the car that surprised you the most as far as sales?
Boy, that's a hard one. I mean, all the cars that we have made have done really well. I think the car that surprised me the most is probably honestly the first one, because the first one was the hardest one, in the sense that I had no idea what was going to happen, and I had no idea how the market would react, because nothing was really like that on the market for freight cars. At that time, there were no freight cars on the market, if I recall correctly, with wire grab irons and KD couplers out of the box. Like that was something that just was unheard of, and etch metal roof walk. So yeah, that shocked me a lot. And I had no idea how many to produce, and I had no idea how fast they would sell. And because it was a new company selling a new product, it took a while to sell out that first run. And now lately, our runs have been selling more quickly. And part of that has to do with the fact that the brand is more established. Part of that has to do with just some of the picks that we've made lately have been really good ones, and probably better than some of the others. But hey, any release is a good release as far as I'm concerned. I like to give my customers products. I really love it. Like I have fun with certain friends of mine who are friends of mine, and I don't even tell them what's coming. And I'm just I have a friend who's like who was a chassis modeler, and I was like 6 months ago I was like, save your money, you're going to get hit, and that was, at Christmas time, we released chassis Pullman Standard 4750s. And then 30 days later, or 38 days later, whatever it was, at Springfield, we released the chassis caboose. I mean, we just completely bombarded the chassis modelers there. So it's kind of fun. And I had hinted at that in a newsletter early in the year. I said, chassis modelers, fasten your seatbelts. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So how do you think this went?
The podcast, discussion?
Yeah, this podcast.
I think it was super fun. I love talking about Tangent.
Yeah. How'd you come up with the name?
Well, when I moved to North Carolina, there was all this talk about the longest straightaway, in North America, is on the Atlantic coastline and in Georgia or whatever it is. And, so it's near here. And I just started to think like, I really like that word. It's a very railroady word. And I didn't want to name the company after me because I don't personally agree with naming a company after yourself per se. I wanted it to be more generic, more about trains. So Tangent was the name, and Scale Models came along with it because that's what it is. We provide scale models.
All right.
Okay, I'll throw another question at you. Ever any thought of dipping into that old great standard AAR 40-foot boxcar?
That's a great question. Yeah, you should probably think about buckling your seatbelt at some point for that. That's something that we've definitely thought about. Yeah, we've thought about those. Yeah.
How about?
Are you talking about Canadian ones or American ones?
Well, it's just that there's a market that tons of guys model 50s, 60s, even into the 70s are still seeing some of them. So there's a potentially huge market for that so-called standard AAR 40-foot boxcar, which had all sorts of variations.
Right here, bring it on.
Yeah, I mean, I love older freight cars, especially the tank cars. That's obviously been a passion for me based on the releases you've seen. I also like the old box cars. The problem is that, a lot of the old box cars have been done. So it's kind of the F unit syndrome where people say, oh, another F unit. So there's that as a potential thorn. But I think there's some box cars that need to be done. And so, Tangent will be doing more box cars in a generic sense going forward. We don't have a lot of box cars in our line presently, but there's quite a few coming.
I have to throw you a bit of a plug here, David, because, I own several of the Tangent tank cars because they fit the area that I'm modeling quite well. And the region that I'm modeling had a lot of chemical processing and pulpwood and, other paper-related things going on. So tank cars were aplenty. So it's been really nice to have that selection available. So that's been great.
That's cool. Do you model St. John, or where do you model?
Down through the Ottawa Valley, so it's all lumber, paper, chemical products along the Seaway, kind of down southeastern Ontario. So it's a lot of there was formerly a lot of industry here. It's not so much anymore, but it was at one time it was very plentiful.
Yeah, I've looked at aerial photos of that region, and it's just incredible. There's so much railroading down there.
So Ron,
one time, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, George. I apologize.
No, sorry, Lionel.
No, I'm sorry, George.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that both of you are sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry that we're all sorry.
I hate that.
Yeah, me too. Is Ron sorry?
No.
Attaboy. Well, we're sorry that you're not sorry.
So, Ron, if you were to do a review of the Tangent N-scale hopper, how long do you think that video would be, and would it be exclusively about the Tangent product?
Well, when I do reviews, I typically do a review specifically and exclusively of a particular product. those reviews of a freight car, it's a little shorter than a locomotive review because you don't have the operation, quite all the details to run. But those videos usually run about 15 minutes, and they tend to do pretty well on my channel.
Yeah,
typically.
So it'd be good if you guys got yourselves organized and perhaps you got some product and then you could review it and that would be like free advertising for tangent scale models. Silence.
You're not going to get any argument from me.
Yes, this can be arranged for sure.
In his head, Ron's like, "Bring it on!"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
He's like Homer. No, don't say. Oh, no.
Too late.
I seem to be organizing up a ton of your review videos now. I should be the guy. I should be vice president at Ron's Trains and Things, in charge of product reviews department.
Yeah, or
get a hat or something to go with it.
Yeah,
social media director.
Yeah. Hey, you know what, guys? I was keeping score, and there were 6 questions that were great.
There you go.
So, do you remember, David? Do you remember some of the questions that you thought to yourself, "Well, that's not that great," but I'll answer it anyways?
No, I'm not generally into grading the people that ask me questions. I just like to talk about it. It's my passion.
Well, next time you come on, bring yourself a pen and paper and make sure you grade us on how we do.
I could do that, but I don't think that's as high a value as talking about things that people want to hear about, which is why on earth does that N scale car not run on a 9.75 radius?
See, this would be like the Kelly questions in reverse.
Yeah, exactly. Or why on earth, when he used to make tank cars and box cars and covered hoppers, why is it all cabooses all the time now?
Right.
10 years.
Yeah, or when are you going to make an F unit? Yeah.
Yeah, when are you going to make an F unit? And what did the caboose sell for?
The cabooses are the first run of cabooses are $89.95. The second run, I don't know yet.
Oh, really? You're kind of waiting on with costs and everything.
Yeah. So this there's been some changes with the world lately, if you haven't noticed. So
I haven't.
Everything's a little tricky now.
All right.
Changes.
Changes. Who did that song?
David Bowie. Would be David Bowie.
Turn and face the strange. Yeah.
I can do music trivia pretty well. I'm a big fan of rock and roll. In fact,
we might have to have a conversation.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, we could talk about what's in your turntable/CD player right now. That's always a good question. I like to ask people as a tease question.
Do you believe in magic?
Seriously?
And I know you do.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. In a young girl's heart.
Okay.
Oh my God! Love and Spoonful, for crying out loud.
I know. Yeah, no, I got it.
How about I Want You Back? Who is that? Jackson 5, 1969.
Yeah, see, you're
okay.
You were ahead of your time, Lionel. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, no, I'm okay. Here, this one you have to know. Stop in the Name of Love.
Of course, the Supremes.
There you go.
Yep.
Suspicious Minds.
Suspicious Minds is well, you're really stuck in the 60s. Hold on, give me a second. Let me take
well, you said you could do songs, so I
need some elevator music.
It's Elvis.
It's not the Grassroots, right?
No,
it's
Elvis Presley, 1969.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Dwight Yoakam did the cover for the
yes
the Elvis in Hollywood movie here.
Was that what he did? Was that what the cover was for?
Yes, the whatever it is, the Flying Elvi.
Okay, Suspicious Minds was one of the greatest Elvis songs of all time, and Dwight Yoakam did a great cover to it. All right, I'm going to give you an easy one. Bad Moon Rising.
Creedence Clearwater Revival.
No, CCR. For the hip kids, we refer to it as CCR.
I'm surprised you're not like doing famous Canadians like Joni Mitchell, Neil Young band.
There aren't any. There aren't any.
Ooh.
I'm a big fan of Neil Young. He's
okay. Well, Gordon Lightfoot, Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Great song.
My favorite Gordon Lightfoot song is Alberta Bound. What a great tune. It is a great tune. Regardless of the lyrics, it is a great tune.
Yeah, there's that little known Canadian band Rush you may have heard of.
Yeah, I'm not a big Rush fan.
Oh, I'm a huge Rush.
No, I'm sure you are. You could be. You know what, Ron? You could be Canadian. You would fit right in. You would be like.
You know how to take that.
What about like Stan Rogers? I love Stan Rogers. My wife's dad is a huge fan of Stan Rogers, and I, kind of grew up some of my formative years listening to Stan Rogers records. You guys know them?
Some of them.
I know some. Yeah. Should I ask him, Bruce?
Canadian guy, right?
No, absolutely. Great Canadian musicians, great Canadian songs. Should I ask him, Bruce? I'm thinking of Tilsonburg or Sudbury. Which one should I go with?
Go with Tilsonburg.
Do you know who Stompin' Tom Connors is?
No.
Yeah.
It's hard in America. It's hard to, there's a divide, there's a wall,
There isn't for me. There isn't for me.
Okay. I'm going to throw the bone right at his head. Have you heard of the hockey song?
Oh my God. Yeah. If this guy he is a hockey. Oh my God. Stompin' Tom Connors and the hockey song.
He's got to have heard that. Like, I mean, come on.
That will
probably. I don't know. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Hello out there. We're on the air.
Hockey night.
Okay.
The player is Flash. The players are Flash.
And of course, back to Stan Rogers. He unfortunately died that plane accident where they had to land in Cincinnati. The Air Canada flight was on fire.
Oh, did he die in that one?
Yep.
Wow. A lot of that was quite the thing. The guy trying to get the thing down on the ground. Holy mackerel! That was something. Hello out there. We're on the air. It's hockey night tonight. The tension grows, the whistle blows, and the puck goes down the ice. Anybody want me to keep going, or should I just call it?
I think we're good now.
I'll Google it.
That is sufficient.
Stompin' Tom Connors and the hockey song. You Google that. That will change your life. If your two favorite NHL teams are the New York Rangers and the Chicago Blackhawks, which are two of the original 6 teams, this song will change your life. By the time you wake up tomorrow, after you've heard this song, you will be a different man.
Well, I hope we get hockey back. That's something I really hope for. I have
a great. By now, we will know what has happened. But if the NHL listened to me, this is what happened. This is the greatest. They could be the greatest 8 months or 9 months in hockey history. They pick up the season from 2019, 2020. They pick up the season where they left off on September 1st. They finish the season, which was only about 3 weeks worth of time. Then they do the playoffs and the Stanley Cup, which will get them to about the middle of December. They take a week off. They play a shortened season of about 50 games, and then they have another Stanley Cup champion by the middle of June. Oh my God, that would be like the best 10 months of sports ever. 2 Stanley Cups in a 7-month period. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that sounds great for us, but I don't know about the players.
Well, they're making lots of money, so we're okay.
They play an awful lot of games, though,
They do play an awful lot of games and get paid an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
And
for several $1 million, they can stop complaining.
Yeah, and
yeah, but aren't they kind of underpaid relative to the other guys like basketball and baseball and the football? But
they're kind of underwatched too.
If they're right,
that's a podcast in and of itself.
That's a podcast in itself, but they get lots of money. They get paid hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. Plus, they get the hot hockey wife.
Right.
So you can't overlook that. Bruce, can you give out our email address?
Certainly. Our email address is mothlerslife, mothers with 1 L, mothlerslife@gmail.com.
And we have a website, mothlerslife.com. If you go there, you're going to find there'll be notices of the most recent episodes. And if you want to send us an email and you can't remember the address, there'll be a picture of Bruce, the moderately agitated mailboy, in a particularly agitated state. And if you just click on his face, you won't need to remember the email address, and you'll be able to automatically send out an email, which would be cool. And also on that page, you'll see you can click on Patreon, which will give you twice. If you spend $5 a month, you get twice as many episodes. You'll get every Monday is a free episode, and every Tuesday is an extra. Our very own Kaylee Zhang calls that the Antics channel. And as well, if you're a Patreon member, you can join us in our Zoom chats, our Patreon chat room, which is popular with some folks, and meet other Patreon members. So that's cool. I think we've covered it all, have we not?
I'll just throw something in that picture you used of me on the website. That was me doing the grumpy old man look for Halloween one year, and I absolutely nailed it.
You nailed it. You nailed it. I went looking for a picture, and I scrolled down into the photos page, and it was like, boom, there it was. It took me like all of 5 seconds to find that picture. It was a particularly easy day that day. So now at the end of the podcast, David, how do you think it went? You're pretty happy with this?
Yeah, it was super fun. Thanks for inviting me. Really, really, really appreciate it. I don't think we've done the full length one. We've only done short ones in the past at shows, so it's much better to do it in this format without having tons of people, taking our pictures and trying to talk to us and that kind of thing in the middle of it. So it's nice to have a kind of relaxed conversation.
Absolutely. And now I don't really mind people taking my picture. I expect it because I'm a particularly good-looking man for my age.
Absolutely.
I have a particular striking pose. Okay. So at the end of the podcast, you have to say happy rails to you. Can you handle that?
I can say that. Sure.
All right. At the appropriate moment, you have to say that with gusto. All right. Do you feel like you're ready?
Okay.
All right. Well, David, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say
happy rails to you.
While in Busted Knuckle, guests of A Modeler's Life podcast stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late-night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.